how do I want to show up in the world? What do I look like when I'm confident and I'm contributing and I'm having fun? I realized, oh wow, I'm actually capable of doing this. I really can take on a role, and not just in the context of acting. I was much more interested in the idea of performing in my normal life.
Welcome to the Habit of Possibility podcast, the show about turning obstacles into opportunities. I'm your host, Robbie Spier Miller. Today, Chris Rod, the owner of Rod's Media and producer of this podcast, is joining us to share how he broke free from the mental tug of war that was holding him back, both in love and in work. His story is a powerful example of what's possible when we stop debating and start doing. Before we begin, we have a special announcement. We've been having many requests these days for help with managing stress and navigating all the change happening around us. So we are offering a free 1-hour stress management workshop, both in person at our training facility in Burlington, Ontario, Canada, and online via Zoom. Check the link in the show description for more info and to register. Now let's get started with the show. Hello, everybody. This is Robbie Spier Miller, and I'm the host of the Habit of Possibility podcast. Today, we're going to explore the topic of how to escape your own prison. So some of us really get caught up in old stories or excuses or running the same patterns over and over, and it seems more comfortable or safer or easier to keep doing them, even though they're hurting us, than it is to discover something new. And I have here today Chris Rod, who's the owner of Rod's Media. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Robbie.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
So start by telling us the story of how you asked your wife out on your first date. What happened?
That's a good way to start.
Yeah.
Well, our relationship had been developing here. She works in my office in a different department. So things actually moved along quite quickly, but it reached a point where it was easy for me. I guess what happened was we started working together. So I kind of needed that. I had been admiring her for several months without taking any action whatsoever. There was a few small encounters that we had through projects that, she ended up being involved with very briefly, just little conversations. And I experienced a lot of like, oh my gosh, I really, really like her, but I'm also feeling hopeless. Like, oh, I'm just going to do the same thing again. I'm not going to take action. I don't know how to take action, and a lot of fear related to that. And then fortunately, we ended up working on the same project together, 50-50. So I ended up having to spend a lot of time with her. So through that, we actually got to know each other and develop a rapport, and I got to be more comfortable with her. And over time, I started realizing, I think I can be honest with myself. I think she actually likes me too. But there was still a lot of fear to finally make it official and say, hey, I really like you. Instead of just playing the game, the next obvious step was to tell her, just to communicate that to her. I remember it. There was one day where I can't even remember the details of what happened exactly, but there was some sort of miscommunication, and I reacted very fearfully, and I was like, oh my gosh, I blew it. It's over. Like, I had all these kinds of thoughts. So what happened I reached out to her and I apologized because I thought my behavior was a little bit strange or extreme. I think I was getting excited. That's what it was. I was starting to get excited. I really felt like she liked me. So I said something that I thought she might have thought was inappropriate. Nothing extreme by any means, but just, I think it was more my energy. I felt, oh my gosh, I think I've gone too far. And I think for whatever reason, maybe she wasn't able to reply right away, or maybe she didn't know what to say. So that, sent me on a spiral. So then I reached out to her and I apologized and I said, could you please come to my office? And I just want to explain something to you. So it was in that moment where I was like, I really like you. And I'm really excited by that. And I feel like I've kind of got a little carried away, and I'm sorry. So that was the official moment. That was what brought me. That's what gave me the courage to finally communicate that with her. Through more than just flirting. Um, and then her response was, "I like you too." So, um, that's sort of it in a nutshell. And then we continued to build from there.
Yeah, and you got married, was it about 6 months ago that the wedding
Uh,
happened?
it was August last year, and it was 6 months after our first official date.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So romantic.
yeah.
So, if we stand back from this, Chris, I think this is a great example of a pattern a lot of people go through, including you and me. I've done this as well, where we're very fearful of boldly taking action because we're afraid of what that might mean about us, or we're afraid of losing something and never getting it back. Can you
Yes.
relate to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we'll make up all these stories in our heads and we'll debate back and forth and we'll kind of like, I remember when I was a little kid, I was in this camp and we went to swim at the swimming pool that had a high diving board. And so I said, okay, I'm going to jump off the high diving board. And I climbed up to the top and went to the edge. And then I looked down and I was like, oh my God, I don't think I can do that. So I stood there debating for a few minutes and other people wanted to go off the diving board, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
come on. So finally, I decided that I was going to just come back down the ladder and not
Mhm.
jump off. So I do, and then on the way down the ladder, I fell, and the next thing I knew, I was in the first aid clinic. I had scraped my nose, so that whole summer I had like this totally, deformed nose. It would have been a lot safer to jump off,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Even
But
if
I
you belly
think
flopped.
yeah. Yes, that's right. Even a belly flop would have been better. So the story you told about starting to date your wife is very similar to that, where you're kind of um, back and forth debating yourself about it or fearful about what might happen, instead of
Mhm.
being in real life and doing something and then responding to what actually happens. And eventually, when you did ask her out, you were in real life and you did something, right? And you responded to what actually happens. And it wasn't such a big deal in the end.
You know what? You're right. It wasn't. I mean, there was a big release on the other side of that, for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, it was like, okay, I did it. That's a huge milestone, especially because I'm, 44 at the time. A lot of years have gone by. There's been some relationships and all of, water under the bridge kind of stuff. So to face that and to make that decision, despite all of that, despite the stories, despite the overwhelming emotions, it was a big leap, and I think I was able to let a lot go. But I still remember I was in shock. Because she said, "I like you too," and it was like there was a part of me that wasn't willing to accept that. And it
Mhm.
wasn't until after she left the room where I was like, "Did she say she likes me?" I was like,
Did that
I was,
really happen?
yeah, it was like this. I was watching from the third person, and then I
Uh,
then I had to go back in afterwards and own it.
yeah.
Yeah,
And she might have said she wasn't interested.
yeah.
That could have happened too.
And I remember saying, "It's okay," because this feeling for me is so real and so valuable. Um, and the experience that I had had with her up to that point to me was worth all of it. I felt willing to take the risk.
Hmm. Yeah.
Although at the same time, I still felt confident that it wasn't as risky as it felt, based on her behavior. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Chris, what you're describing here is what Dr. Edgar Barnett called crime of existence. And Dr. Barnett happened to be from Kingston, Ontario. And what he identified was that we tend to have a judge and a jury in our minds, passing judgment on ourselves over and over and over. And one of the things that we put ourselves on trial for is the right to exist or feeling worthy of being here. So, the way you coped with life in the past was probably when you were younger, maybe as a kid, you imagined that your presence put so much stress on the people around you that you felt like you had to make up for it or help them or do things for other people to feel worthy, and you weren't feeling like you were good enough just because you're here. Does that make sense?
It does. It's hard to look that far into the past and make a direct association, but I mean, the concept certainly makes sense.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be direct. For example, when my older son was a baby, my husband and I both had the stomach flu at the same time. And we were so sick. And he was little. He was probably like 10 months old. And he's the kind of baby who needed a lot of attention.
Mm.
And he couldn't understand that we had the stomach flu, right? So, it's possible that he developed a way to cope with that type of scenario when he wasn't getting what he needed. And it was totally innocent, right? We're just parents who happen to be sick. And so sometimes it happens that way, or sometimes parents are immature or in their own pain, or they're having mental illness or various challenges, right? Addiction problems. So there are various circumstances where a child might be in a situation where they're not getting what they need. And one response to this is to feel like you need to help or make up for things or prove that it's that you're okay by doing things for other people. It's one way of coping. Okay. Not everybody responds that way. But that was definitely a response that you have had in your life, right? So my son for sure does not remember this happening, right? And I have no idea what impact it had on him. But you see how it's just an example of the influences we have over time, and the role that our parents play can we have to cope with that at various stages of our life. And we don't necessarily remember what happened. And we don't have to remember what happened. All we need to do is say, yes, I see this pattern in myself. And yes, that's no longer true. As a baby or a little kid, you're relying on your parents for survival. It's not true anymore,
Yeah.
right? So even if the way we've coped played a role or was useful at a certain time when we started doing it, it doesn't mean it's still useful today,
And
right?
so you aim to become single-minded about moving forward, I guess.
So the key to this, Chris, is if this comes up for you, you want to thank your subconscious mind for helping you, right? So you want to imagine, hey, there was this time in your life whenever you started doing this where there was a challenge for you. You weren't getting what you needed and you needed to cope in some way. And this was the choice you made at that time. And then you did survive. So your
Mm.
subconscious takes things very literally, and your subconscious believes because you survived, it's a good thing to do, right? Because it keeps you safe. Yes. So that's why we keep doing these behaviors over and over and over. And that's why people end up in this kind of frustrating debate with themselves where they realize they're hurting themselves, but they are making a different choice. Right? So this is a really good power move, is to thank your subconscious mind for helping you and be very gracious about it. Because notice that before, what you were doing is going, I can't believe I'm still doing this. I'm totally hurting myself. Why can't I just make a decision? Right? Or you were rationalizing all kinds of excuses to not do it. And you believed your stories.
Yeah, it's just part of the pattern.
Mhm.
So you're suggesting I mean, it's more of an opening. I'm picturing like, okay, thank you. You've helped me. You've done your job. I can take it from here.
When you approach it that way emotionally, you are much more open to other options because you don't feel attacked. Okay, so before you were attacking yourself and getting upset with yourself,
Ah,
and our
interesting.
natural reaction is to defend or to escape, that kind of thing.
That's really interesting. Is that I'm used to being able to identify larger patterns in my mind, thoughts. But this to me anyway, this idea of the way you just framed it seems like such a small thing, like a little micro pattern in there, but you know, very powerful. If I continue to let it be, if I continue to let it run.
So agreeing to do it and also agreeing to see it as a pattern, like you've done this pattern over
Mm.
and over again in your life. So there's nothing more to learn about it. You can
Yeah.
just say, yeah, wow, that was from a totally different time in my life. Scott, my mentor, gives a great way to describe this where when he was a kid, he was an actor and he acted in production after production after production. So they do one for 6 weeks. And, let's say he was playing in the play Alice in Wonderland. And then 6 weeks later, he was in the play Annie. And so if he was still playing one of the characters in Alice in Wonderland, when it switched to the Annie play, that would not work,
Yes.
right? So you see how, let's say he was the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland, and maybe in Annie he was Daddy Warbucks. So it really wouldn't work to play the Mad Hatter if he's supposed to be Daddy Warbucks. It wouldn't work at all, right? It would be very obviously off. Yes. So if you imagine this like you're in a new play, and this play is asking you to play a new role, then it can help a lot with this.
Yeah. The idea of performance has really helped me in this process of coming to where I am, at least today. Uh, because, and I think I was quite fortunate, I was literally asked to perform. Just small roles. I don't see myself as an actor, but I work in film, um, and it just so happens they often need people to play small roles. So I found myself having to, okay, put on a different mask, perform a role. Um, and you spoke to me about concepts related to performance before, so I had this in my head, but I just basically, in doing that, I was demonstrating to myself how I really can just make that choice, become single-minded about that role. um, I don't know if I'm, correct me if I'm taking this out of context, but
Yeah,
that's,
this
yeah.
is it. It's exactly the context. Yes.
Yeah, and it was literally just like, the same scenario with communicating to my wife that I like her, girlfriend at the time. Having to play this role, there was all this other story that accompanied it. The shyness, the fear, whatever. It was the exact same thing. Um, but yeah, anyway, you really do have to become single-minded, and I made some progress. I'm not a skilled actor by any means, but I just through that little process, I realized, oh wow, I'm actually capable of doing this. I really can take on a role. Um, and not just in the context of acting. I was much more interested in the idea of performing in my normal life, but not in like, this is something I'm still working out, and maybe I can share it with you. You can give me some insight into this, because so that leads me to this idea of, well, I want to be authentic. I don't want to perform and be inauthentic. Like, um, so this all of this work has brought me to a point where it's like, well, how do I want to show up in the world? What do I look like when I'm confident and I'm contributing and I'm having fun? That happens quite naturally at different points in my life. Um, but finding myself at a period in my life where I have felt stuck, I really felt like I needed to. Um, uh, I wanted to be able to imagine the person I wanted to be in different social situations, but I didn't know what that looked like, because most of my experience when I chose to interact with people, even if I was having a little bit of fun, it was still quite uncomfortable. And I didn't like who I was.
Hmm.
Um, it's hard to me. It was like, what is my identity? What is this person that I'm going to perform? What, like, so, and so that in itself, I realized, started to become kind of a trap, because I'm thinking too much about something that is actually I carry my identity with me, but it only manifests when I talk to people, when I interact with people. Um, so I just need to get out of my own way to let that happen. I shouldn't be contrived. I shouldn't be thinking too much about it. And then that way I can respond to different situations as they suddenly appear.
I'm going to suggest, Chris, that authentically torturing yourself it's probably not a useful outcome for you.
Authentically torturing myself.
Yeah, because with all of this debate, you're like, but I need to be authentic. And then you're worried about all these things, right? And you're in the way of really participating in life. So when you learned how to be excellent as a sound person, do you call it a sound technician or what's the official title?
Sound engineer.
Okay. So when you learned how to be a sound engineer, there were experiences you needed to have to get good at that. Yes?
Yes.
So when you were having those experiences, you weren't going, well, I'm kind of faking this, right? I don't really know how to do this. Who am I to play with these knobs on this mixing board? You were just doing it. And by doing it over and over again, now you are a really excellent sound engineer and you are good with that. Like you're not going, well, I don't know. Am I really a sound engineer? You just are. Yes? The challenges of life are where the juice is.
Yeah. So yeah, there's maybe a better way to articulate that, but there's.
Yes. Yeah. Because, yes, we want to look at it like if we were all. Sometimes I have clients who are retired and they've been looking forward to their retirement for their whole career, right? And finally they made it. And often what happens is they end up not knowing what to do with themselves,
Mhm.
or they feel entitled to sit on the couch and eat chips all day long, and then they hurt themselves. And so when this happens, they're having a temper tantrum because their mind and body are going, hey, go do something. And they're resisting it. Yes. And so my experience has shown me that we all need another mountain to climb. And if you've climbed the final mountain, well, you know the saying that idle hands makes the devil's work,
Mhm.
right? So we want to keep our hands busy
Yeah.
with a challenge, right? With our mission, that
Yeah.
we always need a mission. And Chris, when you have the mission in mind, it's a lot easier for you to go to that place of taking action.
Yeah.
But if the mission isn't clear, there's no accountability about it, that's where you used to cause all this pain for yourself.
Yeah. Go into, resenting the challenge that's in front of me rather than being able to see beyond it
Mhm.
or stepping up to meet it the way that I need to stay on track toward the goal. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So if we go back to that example of me on that high diving board, if I was at a place where the diving board would just like uh, move so that I had to jump off and I didn't have a choice, I would just jump. And you have situations in your life where that is happening,
That is
right? Where
happening.
you just jump and you're okay. And right. So you want to start realizing, hey, I can do this by choice. I don't have to be forced to do it.
Yeah.
But when you wait till it's so painful or so boring that that's the only option, it's unnecessary to wait till that point.
Well, and I believe that the world, there's a reflection always. The world is reflecting ourselves back to us in all of these subtle and big ways. And unfortunately for me right now, there's some people who are close to me that are, it seems as though the universe is sending me a message like it's time to make the choice. Like, anyway, yeah, I think my biggest motivator is that I've realized how many people are relying on me and how much better I could be doing if I made that choice, if I just became single-minded about who I am and how I want to show up. Um, I could be serving on such a higher level and changing lives rather than always looking for help from other people.
So what you're describing is your mission, right? Now
Yeah.
you have this clear sense of mission, and when you are clear that way and you see that people are relying on you and there's a purpose, then you just do it. There's no room for this
Yeah.
back and forth.
Otherwise, I'm looking at myself, and I had become strangely comfortable, living that way and living out that pattern.
Mhm.
Not comfortable. Anyway, we don't need to go into that, but it was, if the world was all about me, I could just stay there. But, the world is not all about me. So,
And that's a good thing. We need that. Right? We do. We need that. Yes. So every person in the world has some sort of mission. People may or may not know what it is. If you live your life assuming you have a mission, and sometimes our path reveals it to us, sometimes we have no idea what our mission is, but if we trust that that's there, it's a lot easier to simply agree to this.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I need that. I
Mhm.
need that mission, and I know it can be many things for different people, but yeah,
Yeah.
my mission is clear, and now it's just a choice.
Yeah. So even without fully embracing this, you've made so many great changes in your life, right? Like you're in this beautiful relationship now, you
Yeah,
built your business, you're making more money, right? You're helping more people, having more
yeah.
opportunities. And so just imagine when you do embrace this, you're freed up to do so much more. All that energy that was wasted before and all that debating can now be channeled to being on your mission.
Oh yes, and I mean, take those words literally. So much energy. I can't see it. I can't hold it in my hand and show it to you, but I know that it's there. There's a big transaction there to be made.
Right. Yes. And Chris, I've done this too, so I really get it.
Okay.
Right. And there was a point where I was really upset with myself about it. And I went like, how could I have done that? And when I started learning hypnosis and NLP, which we teach here, I remembered going like, why didn't I know this earlier? And I was upset about it. And then I realized I was just wasting more time. So, this
Mm,
graciousness, this thanking your subconscious mind for helping you,
mm,
right? This being gentle about the past and kind of letting it go is the thing that frees you for your future. And we have lots of ways in hypnosis to help people's subconscious learn how to do this. And you do have to be willing to agree to learn, right? Because if you fight it and have a temper tantrum about it, it's not going to work the same way.
no, I mean, it's basically choosing to not agree. it's,
Yes, that's right.
it's like saying nope.
Yeah. Sometimes it's choosing to do the opposite, even if it's hurting you,
Hmm.
right? So when people are willing to like see this and agree that they want to change it, there are many ways that we can help with hypnosis training to make that doable and accessible to people. And it's a structure. Sometimes we don't know what that is because we haven't experienced it before. I know it was new to me when I learned it.
Well, just like those old patterns form, new ones can form. Isn't that what you're doing through the
Yes.
hypnosis process? Is
Yeah.
choosing to form new patterns?
That's right. So,
Yeah.
from a neuroscience point of view, we have these neural pathways in our minds, kind of like, a super highway in your mind if you've done something over and over again, like driving your car, where it's so automatic that you just do it.
Hmm.
It's muscle memory. And then if we stop doing whatever that activity is and start doing other things, then that old highway will become eventually a dirt road or might disappear
Hmm.
altogether. And then we're building this new pathway or this new highway to how we want things to be. So that's what we're doing in neuroscience terms, right? But we do need to be willing to agree to let go of that old sabotaging superhighway and build the new one that works better. Yeah. And the temper tantrum we're describing here is so common. Most people don't change
Mm.
simply by agreeing. Often it happens against their will. So, Chris, what you're describing in these situations is the circumstances were such that you realized that it was better to just do it. So, in
Yeah.
a way, your decision was taken away from you, right? Your debate was taken away, and there was just one clear decision. And you waited until the life circumstances created that. So, what I'm suggesting here is that now that you can see that pattern, you can choose to do it without going through all that pain and hustle and waiting and wasting time. Yes?
Yes, you can. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. So, teach me what you've gotten from this. Like, what are your takeaways?
The single mindedness really stands out. um, you know, we can play all kinds of tricks on ourselves. These patterns will do that. They're designed to do that. uh, so it, um, but especially, you talk about how we can, I left this until I had no choice, but you can get a head start. Um, but you really have to believe. You really have to believe that you can form new patterns.
And you
Um,
have to believe in the mission, right? That the mission matters and that you
yeah.
can form new patterns. And so you've had real life evidence that you can.
Yeah, it wasn't enough to just say I want to be happy, and to just say I don't want to repeat this pattern. That wasn't enough. I needed a bigger context. I needed something more to step into,
Mm.
other than just not repeating the same thing over and over again. I mean, that's a good goal, but why do I, why do I want to live a better life? Why do I want to leave those patterns behind? So I think
Yes.
it's important to have that for sure. And yeah, again, mission needs to be whatever makes sense for a person in their life.
So mission trumps temper tantrums.
Yes.
It's a good way to sum it up.
Yeah. Another thing I heard before was don't take counsel from your emotions, I think is something along those lines anyway.
Well, how we put that in a very elegant way is that emotions are kind of like having a pee. And that's where they belong. So you
Okay.
want them to flow through you and you got to let them go. But there's nothing more to them than that. So
Yeah.
you used to believe your emotions and tell yourself stories about them. And then those stories would make you feel more emotions and you'd be in this cycle.
Yeah, it's you can go so deep into those emotions if you want to. You can get so lost in them if you let yourself. It's strange.
Yeah.
But I like this analogy of just peeing them away.
What emotions do you associate with your mission?
Emotions. A lot of joy, a lot of happiness, laughter. It takes courage. Um, but not it takes courage. I don't know if I have that kind. I mean, like the feeling of embodying courage, or the will to face your fears, I guess. Um, there's a fullness to it. The weight that I carry on my chest won't be there. My chest is going to be open. I'll breathe deeper. Um, I know the feeling of presence where you can feel my body, my skin becomes more sensitive. I don't know if that's a very personal experience, but I've just felt before where these moments where I'm like, wow, I feel so present right now. I feel really like I'm here. I hear, I smell, I see more clearly, and you can feel the air moving on your skin, kind of thing. So it's just a much more full human experience. Um, and I always like the analogy of dancing, to be able to just dance with whatever's happening in the moment, and dance with myself, I suppose.
Great. And so you're describing this role that you can play to be on your mission, and that role works so much better for you. And you're much more in reality in that role than anything else you did before.
Yeah.
So I think that counts as more authentic. What do you think?
Yeah, it just is how I am.
Yeah. So it's kind of boring to know how the book ends. And you used to be obsessed with, oh my God, what if the book ends this way or that way or that way? And this is embracing like the mystery of who knows how the book ends.
Mm,
Cool. That's fun. That's interesting.
it's true. Yeah, I don't often think of where it's all going. Maybe subconsciously I'm aware that I don't know where it's going. And anyway, so yeah, it's good to stare down the unknown, and be willing to step into it.
And go in the direction of the mission because you are
Hmm.
going in that direction.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is my mission. That's my direction for sure.
Yeah.
I'm
So when we talk about emotions, the useful thing to do is associate the emotions of being on the mission to your outcomes. So
okay.
you just described how you feel and how your body looks and feels and
Hmm.
moves when you're on the mission. And if you simply agree to step into that role like an actor, then it
Hmm.
will serve you really, really well.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's what it comes down to, whether you look at it with the actor analogy or not. It's, you're stepping into that role. And
That's right.
there doesn't need to be some sort of like process. It's just, I know what I need to do today and just do it.
Yeah, there's something to be said for simplicity.
Yes. I think the highest truths are always the most simple.
Yes.
And
So one way, Chris, I've found that has helped me because sometimes this old pattern can be kind of like getting lost in a maze or like being kidnapped into a situation. I've definitely done
yeah,
that to myself. And what really helps me is to kind of float up above it and see the pattern of it so that if it does happen again, which it might, and for me sometimes it does, I see it, right? Because I see the pattern of it and then I know what it is. And then because I know, oh, this is just that old way, then it's a lot easier to have choices, right? But before I used to believe it and then I created more reality from it because I believed it.
when you stay in it, it's like
Yeah.
this movie, this world that you've created in your mind. But this, as you said, floating above it, that was very useful to me. I heard
Yeah.
you say that once before. Um, and just such a simple thing inside your mind. As long as you don't get immediately carried away by this story, and you have a moment to say, "Hey, this is happening." If you can pull yourself away from it, just believing in the idea of doing that. It's nothing complicated. It's just saying, "I'm going to pull myself away from this right now and look at it from afar." That's enough to separate yourself from it and at least give yourself a buffer and to take back some control.
Yes. So standing back, having perspective, seeing the pattern of it instead of the details or the story, right? So you're
Mm.
looking at, hey, where have I seen
Mm.
this pattern before? Right? What's really going on here? And then you start to see it. It's a lot easier to have a choice.
So looking at the pattern and not the details or the story.
Yes. Yeah. So when I told you the story about my son when he was a baby and us having the stomach flu, right? If we take that as an example, so many people who, like, if we take your response to challenge as a child, there are many, many people in the world who would have your type of response, right? But there are a lot of people who would have a different response. And I would suggest my son's response probably was more to dissociate and go do his own thing, right? To kind of say, oh, well, I'll just go take care of myself. In general, that's probably his response from observing him, right?
Okay.
So that's a very different response to the exact same situation, right? And somebody could have been in a situation with the same coping response as you who was in a genuinely traumatic situation. Maybe their life was actually threatened, right? Or they were neglected or whatever. But the response could be the exact same as my son having parents with stomach flu. Yes.
Hmm.
So you see how this makes it so much easier because we don't need to know the story. We don't
Yeah.
need to tell the story. If we tell the story, we're actually activating the negative neural pathways of the story, which is the opposite of what we want to do. Right. So we can acknowledge it and it's okay. Right. We can pee out the feelings. But if we see the pattern, then we can go, oh, that was just one choice. And when we're little children or babies, we don't know what the other choices are.
Yeah.
So now you do. Now you have lots of possibilities. And a big part of what we do here is what's called modeling, where we're looking at the whole range of human existence and we're looking for models of people who are really good at whatever we want to be good at. So instead of just being able to model our family of origin or react and rebel against our family of origin or choose whatever way we've coped over time with our family of origin, instead we're going, hey, this person would respond this way and that person would respond that way and right? And then we can say, oh, I can play that role. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of juicy power in doing that. And it all starts with being very gracious with yourself, right? Very accepting.
Yeah, that is a key part of it, isn't it? Otherwise, you could very easily fall back into another pattern if you're
That's
not being
right.
careful.
Yeah. When people come for weight loss, often if they're, eating a lot and snacking a lot, they'll be good all day, and then at 4 o'clock they'll have a chocolate bar, and then they'll go, oh well, I already messed it up. So,
Yeah,
and then they'll feel bad about it, and so they'll go and just eat more because they're escaping that feeling of guilt or shame around having the chocolate bar. Right? So this pattern is very common in all kinds of scenarios, and as long as they're mad at themselves about it, they're probably going to keep eating the chocolate.
yeah. For me, it was telling myself I don't care.
Mm.
When something happened, or when I saw that I didn't show up for somebody the way that I needed to show up for them, I let somebody down or let myself down or whatever. It was just like, I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet a lot of people do that. And that's
Yeah.
actually very inauthentic, because doing that, you're doing it because you actually do care, but it hurts too much to care,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, and you hear, anyway, it's what you do in one part of your life is probably showing up in all parts of your life, is something I've come to believe. So if we pay a little attention to the words that we use in different situations, then we might discover a lot about our patterns.
Yes. Yeah. And let's summarize that we don't have a lot of patterns. We might have a handful of them. Each person might have a handful of routines. And so when we simplify it and realize that that's true, it's a lot easier for us to see, oh, yes, I do this pattern, and oh, there it is again, and there it is again, and there it is again, and right, and oh, I already know how to get out of this pattern, and here's the new pattern, so that we can do it in all those different places. So all of a sudden, everything just drops away, and it becomes easy.
Mm-hmm.
So, Chris, for you, if you're willing to fully embrace that, this whole thing will be super easy for you.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can believe in it more than I ever have before.
So, in terms of growing your business, or moving forward with your relationship in a beautiful way, or building new friendships, or being there for people who you're on this mission to be there for, embracing this will help you do all of that so much faster and easier and better and all of that.
And that's exciting.
It is pretty exciting. Yeah. All right. Well, do you want to share with people how to get in touch with you if they need help with their audio?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is rods.media. Just punch that in and you should see the website, which will motivate me to make some changes to it in the next couple of days. And you can also email me at chris@rods.media.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming, Chris, and being so willing to share your experience with other people and to learn so that others can learn.
Yes, thanks for the opportunity. I like to think this is the first of many times that I'll appear on someone's screen and that I'll be able to serve them.
You can reach out to Chris Rod at rods.media. That's RODDS.media. Join us for our free 1-hour stress management workshops. Go to the link in the show description to register. And if you're interested in connecting with me and learning more about personal and business coaching, consulting, and training opportunities, go to mindlinkconsulting.com or hypnosistrainingcanada.com and schedule your free consultation. Let us know what you think of this show. Reach out to us at mindlinkconsulting.com. And if you like this show, please rate and review us so other people can find us too. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Robbie Spier Miller, the host of the Habit of Possibility podcast. Tune in next time to learn more about how you can turn obstacles into opportunities and make the most of your life and career.